What's up, guys? Let's go started.
Sophia stared at her laptop screen, the cursor blinking accusingly. The to-do list beside her keyboard was untouched. Her coffee had gone cold. Another afternoon slipping away. She sighed, rubbing her temples. Why can't I just get things done? Sophia had always been a starter. New projects thrilled her, the rush of ideas, the plans, the fresh notebooks. But the excitement faded fast. Whether it was learning French, writing short stories, or hitting the gym, her motivation burned bright and then fizzled out. Tonight, she was supposed to finish her proposal for a new project at work. But instead, she scrolled through social media, envying everyone else's productivity. Then she saw it. A post about a woman who trained for a marathon by treating every run like a video game. She set milestones and rewarded herself with points and prizes. Sophia's eyes narrowed. Could it be that simple? She grabbed her notebook and jotted down an idea. Gamify my goals. The next morning, Sophia sat down at her desk with a fresh determination. She divided her project into levels, each with its own mini reward. Finish the outline. Coffee and her favorite pastry. Complete the first draft. An episode of her favorite show. To make it official, she drew a simple tracker, boxes to check off each task, and a progress bar running across the bottom of the page. As she filled in the first box after completing her outline, she felt a small thrill. The progress bar inched forward, and she treated herself to a cappuccino and a chocolate croissant. Maybe this could actually work. Sophia's mornings started to feel different. No more dragging herself out of bed or scrolling through her phone for an hour before starting work. Now, she had a quest to complete. Each morning, she'd open her notebook and glance at the colorful progress bar. The next task glimmered like a treasure chest waiting to be unlocked. Today's goal: finish the first draft of her proposal. If she did, she'd treat herself to takeout from her favorite Thai place. She set a timer for 25 minutes, her focus round, and got to work. The words didn't flow easily at first. Her brain tried to tug her toward distractions, emails, cleaning, the sudden desire to reorganize her bookshelf. But she pushed through. Slowly, her fingers found a rhythm. When the timer beeped, she checked her word count. Almost 1,000 words. Not bad. She checked off another box, and the progress bar crept forward. All right, level up, she whispered to herself, grinning. Over the next few days, Sophia's system grew more elaborate. She assigned herself experience points, XP, for each task and created a reward tier. 100 XP, coffee and pastry. 300 XP, new book. 500 XP, spa day. She even made a boss battle for big deadlines, with epic rewards like weekend trips or splurging on something she'd been eyeing for months. But the real reward? The rush she felt every time she checked a box. It wasn't about waiting for motivation anymore. The act of progressing itself became the fuel. Of course, not every day was easy. Some mornings, the familiar slump tried to creep in. She'd stare at her screen, mind blank, fingers frozen. But that's when she turned to her secret weapon: small wins. If the big task felt overwhelming, she'd shrink it down. Write the next paragraph became write the next sentence. Clean the apartment became put one dish in the sink. Each tiny action earned her a checkmark, a dopamine hit, and a little nudge forward. Soon, the momentum would return. And just like that, she'd be back on track. Her project proposal, once a mountain of dread, was now a series of mini quests. Each step forward felt like another coin collected, another level unlocked. And with every milestone, she reminded herself, progress is progress, no matter how small. Sophia's gamified system worked like magic for a while. Each morning, she checked her progress bar, eager to fill in another box. She hit small milestones, collected rewards, and felt the momentum building. But then, the slump hit. It started subtly. One morning, she slept through her alarm. No big deal, she told herself. I'll make up for it tomorrow. Tomorrow came, and she felt sluggish. The project that once excited her now felt like a chore. She stared at her checklist, but didn't move a muscle. Her reward for today, a movie night, suddenly felt unearned. As the days dragged on, the unfinished tasks piled up. The bright, colorful tracker that once gave her a sense of pride now felt like a reminder of her failure. What's wrong with me? She muttered, closing her notebook. That evening, Sophia slumped on her couch, mindlessly scrolling through her phone. She stumbled across an old photo of herself from a few months ago, a selfie she'd taken after hitting a major milestone at work. Her eyes sparkled with pride. She looked happy. Sophia stared at the photo. What had changed? She thought back to the early days of her new system. The excitement, the thrill of seeing progress. Small wins keep the fire burning. She realized she'd forgotten the most important part of her system, celebrating progress. Lately, she'd focused so much on hitting big goals that she'd ignored the tiny victories. The system wasn't failing. She was skipping the fun. Sophia grabbed her notebook and flipped back through her progress bar. She noticed she'd checked off a few small tasks earlier in the week, answering emails, organizing notes, but hadn't rewarded herself. She grabbed a red pen and wrote, "Celebrate the small stuff." That night, she made herself a cup of tea, curled up with her favorite blanket, and watched the movie she'd promised herself days ago. It wasn't a grand prize, but it felt good. The next morning, Sophia woke up with a little more energy. She opened her notebook, drew a new box, and wrote, "Write 100 words." She checked the box before her coffee even cooled. The spark was back. Sophia sat at her desk, staring at the progress tracker. The colorful bars and neatly checked boxes reminded her of how far she'd come and how much further she wanted to go. She tapped her pen against the desk. The slump had rattled her, but she wasn't going to let it win. Not this time. "Okay," she whispered, flipping to a fresh page in her notebook. Time to make this fun again. First, she updated her reward system. The big milestones were still there, but now she added smaller, more immediate wins. Finish a task? 5 minutes of dancing to her favorite song. Hit a milestone? Order a fancy coffee. Every task, no matter how small, deserved recognition. Next, she brought in some friendly competition with herself. She set a daily streak goal, at least 3 completed tasks a day, no matter how tiny. If she hit a 7-day streak, she'd treat herself to a weekend brunch. The final touch? A visual motivator. Sophia grabbed some colorful sticky notes and wrote down her biggest goals: launch project, master French, and run a 5K. She stuck them on her wall, creating a vision board that would remind her why she started. As she stepped back to admire her handiwork, her phone buzzed. A message from her best friend. "Lunch tomorrow? Need a break." Sophia smiled and typed back, "I'll be there, after I finish my morning quest." The next morning, Sophia opened her laptop, set a timer, and dove into her work. Each task felt like a step forward, each check mark a little victory. By lunchtime, she'd hit her streak goal. She checked the box, did a little victory dance, and grabbed her keys. Motivation hadn't magically returned. She'd built it, brick by brick, with every small win. As she walked out the door, Sophia felt something she hadn't in a long time. Momentum. Sophia strolled into the cafe, her mind buzzing with energy. As she sat down across from her best friend, Mia, she couldn't help but beam. "You're looking chipper," Mia said, raising an eyebrow. "Did you win the lottery or something?" Sophia laughed. "Not exactly, but I did finally crack the code to keeping myself motivated." "Oh, do tell." Mia leaned forward. Sophia explained her new system, the colorful progress bars, the daily streaks, the rewards. As she talked, she realized something important. The system wasn't just about chasing big goals. It was about building momentum little by little. "The secret," Sophia said, swirling her spoon in her coffee, "isn't waiting for motivation to strike. It's about creating it." Mia nodded slowly. "So, you trick yourself into feeling motivated?" "Exactly," Sophia grinned. "I don't rely on feeling inspired. I rely on habits. Small wins. Progress, no matter how tiny." Mia sat back, arms crossed. "Okay, but what about the days when you really don't feel like doing anything?" Sophia sipped her coffee, thinking back to those mornings, the ones where getting out of bed felt like wading through molasses. "On those days," she said, "I make the goal ridiculously small, like open my laptop or write 1 sentence. The trick is to make starting so easy that it feels silly not to do it." Mia laughed. "I love that. Kind of like sneaking past your own brain." "Exactly," Sophia said, tapping the table. "And once you start, even with the tiniest action, you build momentum. Before you know it, you're in the zone." Mia raised her mug in a toast. "Here's to tricking our brains into success." They clinked mugs, and Sophia felt a quiet satisfaction. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't chasing motivation. She was building it. That night, Sophia sat down at her desk again. The day had been long, and part of her wanted to crash on the couch. But she glanced at her progress tracker and saw her streak, 5 days in a row. She grinned. Not breaking that streak now. She opened her laptop and got to work. The streak grew. Day after day, Sophia chipped away at her goals. Her colorful progress bar stretched further across the page, each check mark a quiet victory. Motivation wasn't something she waited for anymore. It was something she created, moment by moment. But life had a way of testing new habits. One morning, her alarm blared, but Sophia barely stirred. Her head felt heavy, her limbs unwilling to move. The sky outside was still dark, and the warmth of her blanket pulled her back under. 5 more minutes, she mumbled, eyes fluttering shut. When she woke again, the sun was peeking through the blinds. Her phone buzzed with notifications. She squinted at the screen, 3 missed calls, a dozen emails, and a calendar reminder. Project deadline tomorrow. Panic surged through her. She'd overslept, missed her morning routine, and now the whole day felt out of whack. Old habits whispered in her ear, "It's ruined. Just give up for today. Start fresh tomorrow." But then she saw it. Her notebook sat open on her desk, progress tracker in full view. The streak stood tall at 9 days. Today could make it 10. She swung her legs out of bed and trudged to her desk. "Just one task," she whispered. "One tiny thing." She flipped open her laptop and stared at the screen. Her mind felt sluggish, her motivation non-existent. So she shrank the task. Write 1 sentence. Fingers hovering over the keys, she typed. The hardest part is starting. She stared at the words. Then she added another sentence. And another. Before she knew it, the timer on her phone chimed. 25 minutes had passed. She blinked at the screen. Her deadline loomed, but she'd chipped away at it. The streak was intact. She checked off her task, watching the progress bar inch forward. The slump didn't win today. Sophia sank back into her chair, exhaling slowly. Some days, motivation felt like a roaring fire. Other days, it was a flicker in the dark. But as long as she kept feeding it, even with the smallest sparks, the flame stayed alive. She smiled, flipping to a fresh page in her notebook. In bold letters, she wrote, "Progress over perfection." Sophia's streak hit 30 days. The colorful progress tracker stretched across her notebook like a vibrant mural, each box representing a day she showed up, even when she didn't feel like it. The days of waiting for motivation felt like a distant memory. Now, action came first. Motivation followed. Her morning routine became second nature. She'd roll out of bed, make her coffee, and tackle her first tiny task. Each day, the weight of procrastination grew lighter, replaced by the satisfaction of seeing her efforts build into something real. But the biggest shift wasn't in her productivity, it was in her mindset. One afternoon, Sophia met with her boss to present the project she'd been working on for weeks. As she clicked through her slides, she barely recognized the confident voice filling the room. She was calm, prepared, focused. When she finished, her boss smiled. "This is some of your best work, Sophia. I can tell you've put a lot into it." Sophia beamed. "Thank you. I've been trying something new." She didn't mention the late-night pep talks or the mornings spent pushing through doubt. She didn't need to. The results spoke for themselves. That evening, she walked home with a spring in her step. She'd done it. Not because she'd waited for the perfect moment, but because she'd learned the secret: momentum. At home, she opened her notebook one last time. The final task on her list stared back at her. Celebrate. She grabbed her favorite blanket, poured herself a glass of wine, and curled up on the couch. As she watched the sunset, she thought back to the woman she'd been just a month ago, the one who believed motivation was something you had to wait for. She smiled. That woman was long gone. Sophia didn't need motivation anymore. She had something stronger: discipline. And with it, she knew she could accomplish anything. Weeks turned into months, and Sophia's routine became the backbone of her life. The small actions she once struggled to start had become automatic. What surprised her most wasn't the progress she made, but the calmness she felt. She no longer worried about finding motivation. It found her through action. One morning, Sophia arrived at the office earlier than usual. The city was still quiet, the soft hum of life just beginning outside her window. As she settled into her chair, she opened her notebook to a fresh page and wrote, "What do I want today?" The answer came easily: to show up. That had become her mantra. Not perfection, not massive success. Just showing up. Later that day, her boss stopped by her desk. Sophia, got a minute? She followed him into his office, where he gestured to a chair. I wanted to talk about your work lately. Her stomach tightened. Had she missed something? He smiled. It's been incredible. The team's morale has improved, deadlines are being met, and I keep hearing how much they appreciate your leadership. Sophia blinked. Oh, wow. Thank you. You've created something special here, he continued. It's not just the results, it's the consistency. You've shown everyone that small actions, repeated over time, create meaningful change. As she left his office, Sophia felt a warmth spread through her. This wasn't about recognition. It was about the quiet knowing that she had built this, step by step, task by task. That evening, she walked home under the city lights, reflecting on her journey. She remembered the woman who once waited for motivation, paralyzed by the weight of starting. Now, she understood that action was the key. Sophia opened her notebook one last time. In bold letters, she wrote, "Motivation is fleeting. Discipline is a choice." She closed the notebook, turned out the light, and smiled. Tomorrow, she'd show up again. The next morning, Sophia's alarm buzzed softly. She stretched, rubbed her eyes, and sat up without hesitation. No inner debate, no bargaining for 5 more minutes. Her body moved before her mind had time to argue, a habit forged through months of consistency. As she sipped her coffee, she opened her notebook. Today's tiny task: encourage someone. At work, she noticed Josh sitting quietly at his desk, staring blankly at his screen. She walked over and pulled up a chair. "Hey, everything okay?" she asked softly. Josh sighed. "Honestly, I'm overwhelmed. I've got 3 deadlines piling up, and I don't even know where to start." Sophia nodded. She knew that feeling all too well. "How about this? Forget the big picture for a minute. What's one tiny thing you can do right now?" Josh hesitated, then shrugged. "I guess I could reply to that email I've been avoiding." "Perfect. Just that." She smiled. One tiny step. He gave a small, grateful nod and turned back to his screen. Sophia walked away, feeling lighter. That small act, encouraging a teammate, had lifted them both. Over time, Sophia noticed the shift in her team. People took on challenges with more confidence. They supported each other. It was as if the consistency she had built in herself was spreading, a quiet ripple effect shaping the office culture. One afternoon, her boss asked her to lead a company-wide workshop. The topic? How to stay motivated. She laughed when she saw the email. If only they knew that the secret wasn't motivation at all, it was action. As she stood in front of the room on the day of the workshop, she held up her old notebook, worn and filled with colorful progress bars. "This," she said, holding it up, "changed my life." She told them about the small actions, the check marks, the habits, how she stopped waiting for motivation and started creating it. When she finished, the room was silent, and then a wave of applause. Afterward, several co-workers approached her. Some asked for advice, while others simply thanked her for being real. One woman even held up her own notebook. "You inspired me," she said. "I started my own progress tracker last month." As Sophia walked home that night, she realized something powerful. Her journey wasn't just about her anymore. The habits she built had quietly inspired those around her. She flipped open her notebook once more and wrote, "Small actions, big impact." And with that, she turned the page, ready for whatever came next. The morning sun streamed through Sophia's window, casting soft golden light across her room. As usual, her alarm buzzed quietly, and without hesitation, she rose from bed. No snooze button, no bargaining, just action. Her coffee brewed as she opened her notebook, its pages filled with months of tiny tasks, check marks, and reflections. Today's entry was simple: reflect. She settled into her favorite chair, pen poised, and let her thoughts wander. It had been nearly a year since she started this journey. A year since she stopped waiting for motivation and started embracing action. What began as a desperate attempt to pull herself out of a slump had transformed into a lifestyle. Sophia thought back to the woman she used to be, overwhelmed, uncertain, always waiting for the right mood or burst of inspiration. She realized now that she'd been searching for something that didn't exist. Motivation was fleeting. It wasn't the spark that lit the fire. The fire came from action, from choosing to take that first step, even when she didn't feel like it. Especially then. She smiled, remembering the lessons she'd learned along the way. 1. Small wins matter. Every tiny task she checked off created momentum. The smallest actions had the power to break inertia. 2. Discipline is stronger than motivation. Motivation fades. Discipline stays. It carries you through the days when enthusiasm is nowhere to be found. 3. Celebrate progress. She learned to acknowledge her victories, big and small. Whether it was a completed project or just getting out of bed, each step deserved recognition. Flipping to a fresh page, Sophia wrote, "New chapter." Underneath, she jotted down her next tiny task. Keep going. She closed the notebook, slipped on her shoes, and stepped outside. The air was crisp, the city quietly waking up. Each step forward felt light, purposeful. She didn't need to wait for motivation anymore. She'd built something stronger. With a deep breath, Sophia smiled and walked into her future, one small step at a time.